Hey everyone! So, robotaxis, they're not some far-off sci-fi dream anymore. Nope, they are on our streets right now, picking people up. But behind all the hype, a major new report is showing a much, much messier reality. So, how's it really going out there? Let's dive into the unfiltered data and get the real story.
So, this is really the core question, isn't it? We were all promised this massive transportation revolution, but what we're actually getting, well, it's a whole lot more complicated. This is the story of that promise versus the day-to-day reality.
Okay, first things first, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. The report is very clear on this. When we say robotaxi, we're talking about something that works just like an Uber or Lyft, but without a driver. You hail it on an app, it takes you where you want to go. We are not talking about those automated shuttles you might see doing a fixed loop around an airport or a college campus. That distinction is actually super important for understanding the challenges here.
I mean, just look at this list. This was the dream, right? This was the grand utopian vision that billions and billions of dollars in investment were poured into. We were promised safer streets, mobility for absolutely everyone, a greener planet, and maybe, just maybe, an end to soul-crushing traffic jams. What an incredible picture of the future. But how does it stack up against what's happening today?
All right, so much for the promise. Now it's time for a reality check. We're heading to the actual streets of the US and China, the two global heavyweights that are really putting this tech to the test in the real world. So the first thing you have to get is that the US and China are playing this game with totally different rulebooks. In the US, the report calls it a patchwork. Basically, every state is making up its own rules. It's pretty permissive, which lets companies move fast, but it can also be kind of chaotic. China's approach is completely different. It's much more strategic. You've got these national guidelines, and then specific cities are turned into these high-tech testing zones. Two very, very different paths to the same goal.
And in this global race, a few big names keep popping up. Here in the US, it's really Alphabet's Waymo leading the pack. Over in China, it's Baidu's Apollo Go that's making huge waves. And then you have these really interesting companies like Pony.ai, which are trying to operate in both worlds at the same time. Talk about a challenge.
And just so we're clear, we were talking about some serious scale here. This is not just a little experiment anymore. By spring 2025, Waymo was already providing 250,000 paid rides every single week. A week. This is a major transportation service, period. But then you look at China, and the numbers are just wow. Baidu's service provided over 1.1 million paid rides in just the last 3 months of 2024. The speed of deployment and adoption over there is just on another level. So, the cars are on the road, the numbers are huge, but what's the actual verdict from the streets? How does all this feel for the cities trying to manage it, the regulators trying to keep it safe, and of course the people who are actually riding in these things? Let's start with the folks on the front lines, the municipal governments. They're the ones who have to deal with the day-to-day reality of thousands of these autonomous cars navigating their city streets. What's their take on all this? This single piece of advice from one city leader to another, it is so revealing. It tells you that for a long time, cities felt like they were on the defensive, just reacting to what the tech companies wanted to do. The lesson they've learned the hard way is you have to be proactive. You have to decide what you want from this technology before it just shows up. And what are they so afraid of? It comes down to this one phrase, Scootergeddon. Oh yeah, cities have not forgotten the absolute chaos when thousands of e-scooters just appeared on their sidewalks overnight. They are dead set on avoiding another tech rollout where a company's goals just steamroll public order. Okay, now let's switch to the riders, because this is where things get really fascinating. Check out this massive confidence gap. Among people who have actually ridden in a robotaxi, 76% trust the technology. But for folks who haven't, only 20%. The gap is huge. The takeaway is crystal clear. Actually experiencing it is the best and maybe the only sales pitch. And that experience? Well, it's a real mixed bag. On the one hand, people love it. They talk about feeling safer, they love the privacy, the smooth ride. But on the other hand, the frustrations are very real. The service areas are often pretty small, the routes can be weirdly slow and cautious, and then there's that classic problem of the car dropping you off, half a block away from where you actually need to be. Okay, so we've heard from the cities and the riders. Now what about the regulators, the government bodies whose job it is to write the rules and keep everyone safe? What's the one thing that has really caught them off guard?
Turns out they underestimated a few things, but one issue stands out above all the rest: vehicle immobilizations. Now that's the fancy term for when a robotaxi gets confused and just stops, dead, sometimes in the middle of a busy intersection, blocking an ambulance or a fire truck. It is a huge, huge problem, and it's forcing them to think beyond just looking at crash reports after the fact. Now they're scrambling to figure out leading safety indicators, ways to measure risk before something bad happens.
So, we've seen the promise, we've waded through the messy reality. What does it all mean for the road ahead? Let's try to boil down the key lessons from all this, and then look at the massive questions that are still completely unanswered. The report basically boils all this real-world experience down to 4 crucial, hard-won lessons. 1. Get your first responders involved from day 1. 2. 24/7 availability is a huge advantage, so lean into that. 3. And this one's a giant, the business model is a massive question mark. And 4, none of this works if cities aren't treated like real partners instead of just obstacles to overcome.
But of all those lessons, the one about the business, about the money, it is by far the most stark. The report contains the single, sobering economic finding that kind of puts a shadow over everything else.
And there it is. I'm going to read this directly from the report. No profitable robotaxi business models currently exist, nor have any been documented. Let that sink in. After all this time, all this investment, all these millions of rides, nobody has actually figured out how to make money doing this. That is a truly stunning reality check. And here's a big clue as to why that profitability is so hard to find. The report estimates that for a robotaxi service to even have a chance of being economically viable, it needs a market with a population of at least 500,000 people. This pretty much explains why you're only seeing these things in huge metro areas. The scale you need is just immense. So, if the business model is still a giant mystery, what other big open questions does this report leave us wrestling with?
And boy, is it a long list. We still don't have a foolproof way to prove they're safer than us. We have no idea if they're going to help public transit or just end up competing with it and stealing riders. We're still trying to figure out how to regulate the entire service, not just the car itself. And maybe the biggest question of all, is any of this actually going to change our behavior for the better? We just don't know yet.
Which brings us to the final provocative thought that this whole analysis really builds toward. Are we on the verge of solving some of our city's biggest transportation problems, or are we just in the process of inventing a whole new set of very complex and very, very expensive ones? Right now, the road ahead is anything but clear.